Hello and welcome, 24 hours participants. We are now here at check-in number 2 with production design discussion with guest judge Lesley Headrick. Welcome, Lesley.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being here. I'm going to introduce you. Lesley is a veteran of the animation industry, everyone. Studied animation at the famous Sheridan College up in Canada. Spent early years of her career as a traditional animator, old school hand-drawn stuff, working on commercials and then moving on to features. She returned to Sheridan to set up skills as a 3D artist and went on to make her mark as an animator on such films as The Mummy, Star Wars Episode 2, and AI. Canada called her back and began taking on more supervisory roles, the majority on preschool shows such as Paw Patrol, True in the Rainbow Kingdom, Just in Time, and Backyardigans. She also traveled to the UK to be a CG animation supervisor on the Academy Award nominated Pirates Band of Misfits at Aardman Animation. Welcome, Lesley.
Thank you.
You have such a great variety of experience. This is such a perfect place for you to be right now because there's such a variety of teams making so many different types of films and mediums. Is there thoughts that come to mind right away as these teams are trying to decide what their pipeline is going to be? Of like thinking about they only have 24 hours and it's only a 30-second piece. How they should think in those kind of terms?
Well, when you think about it, really, they're doing a commercial in a really short amount of time. So the whole idea of trying to cram everything through a pipeline in such a short period really takes a lot of planning, obviously, on obviously who's going to do what. And in a timely manner. So, A goes to B, goes to C, everyone's waiting for their moment to shine. So I would say something that's really helpful when you're doing something this quickly is to do a lot of thumbnails when you're plotting out your ideas. So that's useful for your boarding, for your designs, for animating, obviously. Thumbnails are critical because you can plot out your action really quickly, really tiny, and that'll help you think about what you're going to be doing when you actually start to animate. And then obviously planning your time is really important to make sure that whoever is dealing with the back end has enough time to deal with the back end. So it's I don't know if you break it down into how many hours each person has allotted to their particular task, but that's the kind of thing that you would do obviously when you budget out a production.
Yeah.
How much time do you need to do the board? How much time is involved with story? How much time are you thinking, you have to think about maybe the score. Are you going to put some music to it? Are you going to have some kind of a dialogue or whatever you're going to do?
Yeah.
That can kind of happen along the way. Obviously, it doesn't have to happen up front, but it's all of these things come together to create your finished piece.
Well, although because this is 24 hours straight, the longer they wait to make those planning decisions, the slower the plan and the brain's going to go. So it's probably best they make those decisions up front.
Yeah.
As they're probably at the stage now, 4 hours in, that they're hopefully starting to figure out a story, or at least one or two versions of one, and maybe starting to get an animatic going. So they could probably start splitting off teams. So some could start developing storyboards and finalizing storyboards, while others start in kind of production design, starting to think about character design or background design. Do you have any advice in terms of how to kind of communicate either a shape language or something that keeps a cohesive looking piece based on their story?
Well, I think as long as everyone's in the room on the story, then I think once you move off that, there should be a decision made at some point on, is it going to be kind of an angular piece, or is it going to be soft, or is it going to be very lyrical? And Obviously, you want to make your design as simple as possible so you can achieve your goal. But I mean, there's a lot of directions to go in design, and that will probably rely on whatever strengths the artists have and how they want to proceed with their actual production. So a lot of things can come into play, and you could be influenced by a lot of things that you see on the web. Is it something that, is it just a circle and a square, or is it something a little more complex? And is it something with 5 legs, or is it something with no legs? And that, all of these things have an effect again on how much time you spend moving it around.
And the fact that it's animated, they have more properties where it doesn't have to be just these human characters, but they can go into different directions.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thinking about kind of the complexity of some like visuals or production design, like if someone wanted to do something that was more fleshed out, say with like more tone or more range of texture, how do you think about like the economy of what you're going to animate? Like if you're going to do something that's kind of complex, how do you kind of decide how long that's going to take to animate, or what the animation is going to look like versus something that's simple and more speedy to animate?
Well, I think again that'll depend on the story. That's where as an animator, when you get a sequence of work, you always find there's a meaty shot, and the rest kind of work around that piece. So this might be a story point that you really need to you want to make sure it's very full and clear. And that's the one you might want to spend a bit more time on. But also, the thing is, when you're working quickly, sometimes amazing stuff can happen. You can have crazy happy accidents, and you might go a little off script, but you might end up with something that's better than you even imagined originally, because that's what happens when you're animating things. Your lines just start to go and your brain's going at the same time, and you just, oh, what about this? And a lot of things can happen when you're in the moment. So it's you don't want to start at the very first scene and make sure that's the biggest production, because that might not be where you want to put your money. So you have to just think of it as a whole, and where do you really want to, do you build up to something, or do you start with something really magnificent and then you simplify it down into one character story or whatever's happening. So you have to sort of let your creative instinct pinpoint in a little more closely on something that you really want to spend that time on. But be careful you don't spend too much on it, because you do have other shots around to continue the story, right?
Yeah, but it also goes back to what you were saying about knowing the strengths of your team. And so
Yeah.
if you kind of I love that you said you're finding this moment that you can work around, because you'll do that at the storyboard in the animatic. And if you pinpoint that and say who your character animator, strong performance animator is in the team, you give them that shot that we need that performance to work. But maybe there's someone who's stronger at kind of design and just solid poses or something that doesn't need too many fleshed out in-betweens. They could have something that works around those shots.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts in terms of working on a team? You've worked with a lot of different teams and a lot of different studios, and how to kind of work together with common goal and, have a cohesive look, but also, know when to choose your battles and when not to, advice in those directions?
Well, that's a tough question to answer under these circumstances, because if you were all in a room, you could sort of you could have a more immediate response. You could point at stuff, and you could, it's more tactile when you can work in the same space. So with everyone spread out, I'm really anxious to see how things go with everyone. I mean, I've obviously been working at home, and everyone's been working alone these days. So you just do your work and you send it in, and you talk about it and change whatever has to change or whatever, and you just continue on. But there's something about being in the same room with a creative mind and talking about ideas and things fire, ideas fire, and maybe an initial direction can be swayed by someone else's pitch. So that's the beauty of working in the same room. And when you have time, when you don't have time, like right now, you have to rely on making a quick decision and trying to stick with it as best as possible. And again, letting the person with the most strength in that department or that area kind of lead the discussion, and then anyone else that might have a thought, bring it to the table and say yay, nay, or whatever you want to do to move forward. But yeah, it's just like keep the conveyor belt going.
Yeah. You always hear that horrible saying, sometimes you have to kill your babies.
Yes.
How do you?
Too
Yeah, you can't be too precious. So how do you contend with that, or like what would be some good advice? Because they are in such limited time, right? And so
Yeah.
they might have really good ideas, but how do you know which idea is the one to hold on to and which ones you just have to say goodbye to for now?
Well, that's a good question. I know when I was animating on paper, if my paper had a lot of eraser marks, or if I had a lot of scribbles, or if I was just not getting it, I had to rip that paper off and throw it on the floor and try again, or move in a different direction, or think of another approach. With the way everyone is working now, I do feel that if you're feeling a struggle with a drawing or an angle, or if an idea, then you have to stop, give yourself a second, look at it and say, this isn't right. I can't do this. I have to find another route. I have to find another angle. Or maybe that shot isn't working at all in the sequence, and maybe it's not worth putting in. So these are the decisions that are going to have to be made on the fly, obviously. But I would not struggle with something more than maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes even under the circumstances now. And just really go, well, I don't know. And you can talk to your colleagues, obviously your teammates, and say, I don't think this is working. What do you think? And this is where you need to collaborate and get some input from your peers.
Yeah, the early Disney animator Seamus Culhane would talk about that exact same thing where you get that feeling, and if you're not feeling it, just scrap it and start again, and it's
Yeah.
and sometimes by doing that, you work a lot faster because you know what you don't want, and then things just come out of you. So it's
Yeah.
a fine line in this contest, because I've also seen students kind of scrap it until 5 a.m. basically, and then they're
Yeah.
stuck.
Oh, yeah.
They're stuck animating the next day, and they're so tired. So you kind of have this moment right now, I think, for all the teams, which is great, where you can do that scrap, and then you get to maybe midnight, 1 a.m., and it's like, okay, we've got to decide on something and just go forward with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other thoughts about just kind of like thinking about being in the shoes of the students right now and having to work under such crazy circumstances?
Wow, I don't know. I every time one of these 24-hour things come up, I can't even fathom finishing something in 24 hours. I just everyone, you're all amazing to take this task on. I think yeah, I think it's keep it simple. And if you do find a moment to add a little bit, maybe you can save that for the last hour that you have to give it an extra little bit of polish. Don't try and do one shot perfectly and move on to the next. You kind of have to give it a pass over and then look at it and see if everything's working, and then go back in and take your next layer of work on it to give it the next bit of polish. Maybe it won't need much polish. You don't know, right? Work as loosely as possible, because you're working fast and loose, and you can, like I said, you can have some nice happy accidents by working that way. And also you can figure out if something's not working too, right? And definitely don't be too precious. Don't be too married to everything that you do. Not every drawing is for your mom. It's for the greater good of the whole moving picture thing. Um, and I have incredible respect for you all, and I think it's just amazing that this 24-hour thing is growing so much all around the world. It's just incredible. And thank you, Aubrey, for getting this thing rolling. I think it's just amazing.
It was just it was a necessity in order to get students to learn how to work harder. So it was one of those things that
Is that what it was?
Yeah, when I started at Laguna College of Art and Design, the senior class they just weren't working hard enough, and so I said I'll stay in this room until the last student leaves. And lo and behold, 5 students stayed with me overnight, and it was like a dare. And we all watched the sunrise, and then but they got more work done in that 12-hour period, whatever it was. I said, there's a method here. It's crazy, but there's a method that kind of works with students. So
yeah,
keeps working. So I keep doing
it. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think sometimes especially when you get into school and when you're in the arts, there can be those who are very keep their work close to their chest, and they don't want they're kind of shy about showing it. And this is where you can't be that way. You have to just put yourself out there. I guess in that sense, it's good that you're working alone because no one's looking over your shoulder. But as a team, you really have to be ready, available, and willing to show your stuff to someone else and get their eyes on it and get their thoughts on it. And this is the biggest part about this teamwork, is this is the working world. You have to be able to work with other people. You have to be able to give, positive feedback, and you have to also be able to receive anything that's not that's constructive for you to be better. So, all of these things are part of the whole work process, and feet to the fire, you're all going to be learning that.
Before we let you go, I'm going to see if there's any questions from our audience. If you're in the audience and you have questions for Lesley, type them in the chat and we will answer as many as possible.
Everyone's working. There better not be any questions.
It means you're not working.
Yeah.
Anything yet, Christina?
We haven't had any questions for Lesley yet, but someone in the chat did feel that you were speaking to their soul, Louis John Barr. We had the Creative Kobolds checking in. And actually, while you guys were talking about killing your babies, killing your darlings, there was someone sharing on the Facebook page that they just scrapped some storyboards, and it was really hard, but it had to happen. So it sounds like Lesley is just dropping knowledge bombs that everyone can relate to at this stage in the game. Still don't see any questions in the chat, but there are some people watching.
I love, just to recap what we've been talking about today. It's the ideas of working loose, working fast, finding getting something out sooner than later, and not being precious about things, not taking too much time with it, sharing with each other, because if you hold it inside, the thing about brainstorm that I always find is, like, sometimes it's the person that has the idea, but they'll just be real quiet about it, or like you can barely hear it, but it might be an amazing idea, and it's like, and like, now is the time to speak up if you do have an idea, even if you think it's not going to work. That the way brainstorming works is the more input people give, the more the ideas will form.
Yes, definitely. That's a big one. And I hate to say it, but I think a lot of the time women are quiet. Not all women, believe me. There are some that I know that are definitely, they just say it like it is. But also just everyone's thoughts are valid. So don't be afraid to speak up, because yours could be the winning idea. You're valued.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, with that, Lesley, this has been extremely amazing. The students are obviously getting tons from it because they're talking about all the things someone just said we killed another baby. Okay, that's what they're getting from this. What did we learn from Lesley? To kill babies.
Says killed one of their lovely babies,
We
but the
killed
other
one of them.
baby got its life. So stay tuned. Out of the ashes rise the phoenix. Right?
Wow. Deep. Lesley, thank you for taking the time and sharing with us, and thank you for judging this year. And because we don't want Lesley to be influenced by any of you, we're going to say goodbye, and then we'll continue our check-in. Thank you, Lesley.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone. Stay awake.
Bye, Lesley.
Bye.
So amazing input from Lesley. Hopefully you are all at the stage where your ideas are starting to form. Hopefully no one's rushing into anything that they don't love, because it's something you're going to have to stick with throughout the whole 24 hours. So if it's not too late now, if someone's kind of uncertain about something, now's the time to speak up. Keep going. As you head into production design, people are starting to think about the world, the shape language, the characters, how it all fits in, and does it fit into the story you're trying to tell?